Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Fluin, and I am head of developer relations at a company called Axelar, working on Axelar and the Axelar network.
Yeah, probably maybe you can start with some story about how you joined the Axelar team, and also like what you guys doing like briefly.
Sure, sure. So I've actually been in software for a long time. I was at a startup for about 15 years. And then I was at a company called Trello before joining Google for about 5 years. At Google, I led developer relations for a Web 2.0 product that's relatively popular called Angular. And then I decided to jump on the Web 3 universe. And I was at Chainlink Labs for about 2 years, where I led developer relations for Chainlink. And then I heard about Axelar, and Axelar was really interesting to me, being in the Web3 space, because Axelar tries to solve this really important problem of complexity across multiple blockchains, where when I was brand new to Web3, I was really excited. I was writing Solidity, I was building smart contracts, and I wanted to try out, I had done a bunch of test nets, and I wanted to do some mainnet experiments. And so I wanted to get some Matic so that I could deploy smart contracts onto the Polygon network. And I ended up I went to Coinbase, which is kind of my local centralized exchange, bought some Matic, only to find out that they had sold me Matic on Ethereum rather than Matic on the Polygon network. And so that was a really frustrating moment for me. And I think this is something that happens to a lot of developers and people that are new to the space, is you don't know what you don't know about all the different blockchains out there and how to be in the right place at the right time. And so when I started talking to Axelar, and they described this vision of a little bit of abstraction, where users shouldn't have to spend as much time caring about what blockchain they're on, that made kind of instant, immediate sense to me, where if you can be having this abstraction layer that makes things easier for you as someone that's buying and moving around and interacting with dApps using tokens, that is a huge win for the whole ecosystem. And so in a nutshell, what Axelar does is really tries to connect all the various blockchains. And so we do that by allowing developers to build dApps that don't just live on one chain, build a dApp that is what we call interchain. So it lives across multiple different blockchains at the same time, and then is able to communicate with each other while still maintaining all of the trustlessness and decentralization principles that I think are at the heart of Web3.
Yes, thanks, Stephen. So again, thanks everyone for joining this AMA today with Stephen and myself. Let me also introduce a little bit about myself too. So I am Phuc. I'm the co-founder of SotaTek. Our in-house team of more than 1,000 people is one of the leading Web3 solution development company in the region. So I'm honored to co-host with Nicole today, but actually she having trouble with the connection, so I think she will join later. So the session today is with Stephen and Axelar team. This is a new decentralized cross-chain solution, and it's recently been approved by Uniswap as one of the only solution that is secure and decentralized enough for the interchain development. So to be honest, I only have heard about Axelar recently too. So just like you guys, I'm very curious about what Axelar is building to. So let's find out today. Yeah, I think so. The people in this call, they are watching the AMA from Google Meet and also other people in Discord. So our team will try to collect all the answer. If you guys have any questions, just type in the Discord and also in the Google chat here, so our team can collect them and ask Stephen later. So I will stage is yours. So probably you can introduce about Axelar and also some kind of demo so the audience can know about it.
Absolutely. And when I give presentations like this, I am happy to be as involved and participatory as you want to be. So if you have questions during the presentation, something doesn't make sense, or you're looking for a link for something, definitely feel free to paste in either the Google Meet chat where I can see it, or ask a question. We'll make sure we get to all the questions later. And so feel free to, if you'd like to say hello in the chat. I saw that Tao already did say hello in the chat. Always love anyone that wants to come and say hi, because I have questions for you. One of the questions that I asked the organizers and the hosts here was about how many people here were builders and, for example, knew Solidity. And I think they said about 50% are really software engineers writing smart contracts. And so I'm going to dabble a little bit into the smart contract side of this as we go. I understand that might be both too basic for some of you and too advanced for others. Hopefully I give enough context. But if you have any questions as we go along here, I use any terms you don't know, feel free to ask. There are no dumb questions here, because we're all on a journey of learning and understanding. And so the reason I'm here today is to talk about what we see as the future of this idea of interchain applications that I introduced briefly before. As I said, my name is Stephen Fluin. Being head of developer relations at Axelar means that on a day-to-day basis, my job is to focus on making you successful. Whatever it is you are trying to achieve, whether that is learn new skills, get a job, launch a new protocol, really want to figure out what you care about, and then make sure that you are being successful at that. The second part of my job, it's critical in my mind, is really listening and empathizing and understanding what it's like on the other side of the screen, so that we are building the right sorts of products. So in terms of both the features that we add, the shapes of our APIs, all those sorts of things, out to the way that we tell our story and the way that we educate. So on a tactical basis, I own things like our documentation. You're going to see my face on a lot of YouTube videos. You're going to see myself and my team at different events. So for example, if anyone is going to Token 2049 in Singapore, I'll be there in person. So yeah, trying to be everywhere to really support you and the community. To really understand Axelar, I want to go a little bit back in history, and I want to look at the way things used to be. It actually used to be much easier to become a builder in the blockchain space, right? Originally, back in 2009, we had the rise of Bitcoin and the kind of first blockchain, and then this idea was kind of replicated successfully a few times. And Ethereum was a big game changer for a lot of people, because it brought this idea of smart contracts and programmability to the blockchain. And so when Ethereum had just come out, it was actually very easy to become a blockchain developer, because there was only one blockchain that you had to worry about. But as we fast forward to 2017, 2022, we end up seeing that more and more L1s, now more and more L2s are coming out. And each of these blockchains, they're not just saying me too, right? Like each blockchain is bringing something new to the table. They're bringing different governance patterns. They're giving different block properties. They're giving different software, different tools that you can use to build, all these sorts of things. Every one of these chains is bringing something to the ecosystem. And then we also have the rise of application chains, where people are building blockchains just for a purpose, for a single application. We see this in gaming. We see this across a whole bunch of different use cases, where it's easier for someone in Web3 to start up their own blockchain than try and become successful on someone else's blockchain, especially around specific use cases. But this all represents a huge fundamental challenge for builders and for developers, in that we have this paradox of choice. You now have so many options and so many possible ways of being successful that it's actually paralyzing for a lot of people, because you don't know what you don't know, right? We read about hacks, we read about rug pulls. And so Web3 can be a very scary ecosystem. And so Axelar was actually created as an interoperability layer to try and make these divisions less stark. We're trying to ease those and really provide an abstraction layer that makes it easy for anyone to build across multiple blockchains. And so at the heart of what Axelar is, we are connecting different blockchains so that you can build and take advantage of all these differences. So we see this new world as an opportunity, not necessarily as a challenge. So we want to get to a place where maybe your users don't care what chain that they're on currently or where their assets are. We want to get to a world where you can actually take advantage of the chain differences, right? You have blockchains like the secret network, where it's privacy preserving, but then you have blockchains that are fast. You have blockchains that are cheap. You have blockchains with marketplaces like OpenSea connected to Polygon. And we see a world where, what if you could take advantage of all these things, like store your NFTs on secret network to preserve your privacy and your anonymity, but then be able to list them on a marketplace on Polygon, all those sorts of things. And the last one is really about being where your users and oftentimes where their liquidity is. Because if you start a brand new blockchain, day one, you're not going to have any liquidity. And so how are you going to bring your users in? How are you going to build DeFi applications, NFTs, all these different things if you don't have the assets that are necessary to be successful? And so that's really the heart of what Axelar, why we created Axelar. So Axelar ourselves, we are an interoperability layer. We are actually a blockchain ourselves. So we were built using the Cosmos SDK, but around 70% of the transaction volume that we have is just pure Ethereum virtual machine to Ethereum virtual machine, or EVM to EVM. And this graphic keeps getting more out of date because basically every week we launch new blockchains that we're connecting. And so if you take a look, one website that I'll definitely point you to several times here is axelarscan.io. This is where you can really understand, it's the Axelar blockchain explorer, but it's a little bit more than that, because when you start thinking interchain, you need a more native knowledge of how each of the chains are interacting, right? Like the truth then exists across multiple different blockchains, and Axelar Scan tries to abstract that out. So obviously you can use Axelar to move tokens between these, but then also one of the bigger and kind of the more future pieces that we see that's growing much faster is the just arbitrary message passing. So being able to send a message from any of these blockchains to any of these other blockchains with, I don't know, NFTs that are being transferred, or token, like your own tokens or anything like this. So we see things like this volume, but more and more volume is not just in the pure, terms of pure tokens, but in compute that is then being moved across different blockchains. And so being a proof of stake blockchain, we have 75 different validators, and then what basically happens is when you look at a transaction across Axelar, someone has a, let's imagine this transaction from Avalanche to BNB chain. Someone initiates a message on Avalanche, then they pay the gas for that, and I'll talk a little bit about gas a little bit later. What happens then is those 75 independent validators vote on whether or not that happened on the source chain. That's how we come to a decentralized consensus. They sign a vote, and they put those signatures on chain on Axelar. And then those signatures are then relayed to the destination chain, where they can be double checked. They're verified for threshold. And then that allows execution on the destination chain. So this kind of full end-to-end movement of tokens, messages, whatever you're trying to send from one blockchain to another is facilitated by Axelar. So let's go back to the
one question, Stephen.
Yeah.
So for the validators here, are they all run by your team, or they also run by independent third party?
No, we run one of these 75.
Oh, I see.
A lot of the like you'll recognize a lot of these validators as being very active across Web3. So I think here Axelar Core 0 is our validator, and so we're number 9 on the list.
Wow, you guys are very decentralized already.
That is a key part of kind of who we've always tried to be.
Okay, got it. And also the volume is already like nearly 2 billion already. That's the number of like volume of token transfer between different chains, right?
Yep. So exactly. So we've had about 2 billion in volume. But what I'll say is that as I was kind of alluding to earlier, more and more transactions are not coming across with just a simple token transfer. There are things like cross-chain swaps, where you send a message across chain to a DEX on another chain to do a swap. And so, for example, I mean, you can look at the number of token transfers in July was like 12,000, and the number of just arbitrary messages was 90,000. And the vast majority of those are like DeFi, cross-chain swaps and things like that.
I see. So it's just not just normal like token transfer or bridging, but also like smart contract call between different blockchains, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, there's great questions, and feel free to keep them coming. And actually, it's a perfect segue into this way that I see the world, and I see that Axelar differentiates ourselves, because there are a few different interoperability solutions out there. But Axelar really focuses on 3 things. So number 1, security and decentralization. We all saw in 2022 the huge number of bridge hacks, right? Like lots. I think one one quote I heard was that like 80% of all money in DeFi was stolen at some point over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So like that is an insane world to live in, right? It's the Wild West, and we want to start moving towards a world where we have more sanity. And so the way that we achieve a lot of our security is just by pure centralization. Like I think it was something like more than half of the attacks were just multi-sigs that had been compromised. And so for us, being decentralized, not being the ones in control of the network, is actually really important. Second is just deep chain integration. So I think at this point we're integrating to 47 different chains. You can always just check Axelar Scan to see who we're integrated with, kind of what sort of transaction volume you're seeing across different chains. I love looking at some of these stats because it tells you some very interesting stories about what's going on in blockchain. So for example, over the last 7 days, I think I saw that Base was the number 2 destination and source of blockchain transactions. So the top path was path over the last 7 days, I think, was Ethereum to Base. And so that can, there's some very interesting insights around movements around different blockchains across our ecosystem. But being connected everywhere is critical to us. And lastly, but not least, is just this idea of making Axelar very simple to use, right? We want anyone to be able to send a message from chain A to chain B, whatever chains you want, and build that app that's maybe a bit bigger than what a single blockchain can hold. And so making that as simple as possible to architect, which also leads to better security, leads to better performance, better experiences, all those sorts of things. If you look at Axelar's underlying technology, we have a few primitives that we kind of rely on heavily. So you can think about an interchain dApp that you might build where you're taking advantage of Secret Network and Polygon and Avalanche and BNB Chain and Base and Linea. That is a really good thing, but the way that you get there is by having really good, solid underlying technology that lets you do all these sorts of things. And so I tend to split the universe into sending tokens and sending messages, although there is overlap here, as you will see. But I'm going to go through kind of each of these in turn, just briefly. So one of the first features that we launched on Axelar was this concept of a deposit address. And what a deposit address is, it's an address on the source chain, where basically we bake into that address a destination chain, a destination address, and what asset you want to send. And that generates a unique address. And then basically any of the tokens of the right asset type that you send to that deposit address will automatically get forwarded over to the destination address on the destination chain by the Axelar network. And this has a whole bunch of different benefits, and I won't do a full demo here, but I'll just kind of show you that if you're curious about how this works, you can just check out or satellite.money. So satellite.money is just an interface on top of this deposit address concept. And so effectively what I can do is let me find a blockchain that maybe I have some assets on. Where do I have assets? I've been doing too many demos lately. All right, here's a chain. So if I wanted to send USDC from Base to Binance, I basically just say, hey, I want to send 100 USDC. I then pick a destination address, so I can just kind of fill that in with MetaMask, and then I hit generate deposit address. And then the nice thing here is you can imagine generating a deposit address instead of from like a wallet. You could actually withdraw directly from a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange into a deposit address that will automatically get forwarded to a different blockchain and then sent to the address of your choice. So you could theoretically go directly from like decentralized exchange to decentralized exchange without the funds ever hitting your wallet and having to pay like the additional gas fees and things like that. And so this is kind of a very, very nice experience. And so basically what this does is this gives you an address that then anyone that sends that token to that address, it'll automatically get forwarded. So Base is a relatively slow chain in terms of finality, and so we see it takes 30 minutes. If you pick something like I don't know, Avalanche, BNB Chain, you're going to see much faster transactions. But that's in essence deposit addresses, right? Like we take in all this information about where you want tokens to go, and then we create this path. We create this portal between those two blockchains that anything you put in one side comes out the other side. We also have an on-chain equivalent called send token. So this is just a method on any EVM chain where you can say, hey, I'd like to send a USDC to Binance, and then you actually have the ability to do that. I talked about it being simple to use. We have this recurring API that is really important, which is basically we have this method that you take in, or you give it, where do you want it to go? So what chain, what address, what are you sending? And then that's basically it. And so you're going to see kind of that over and over throughout this presentation. And then the third way to send tokens is a relatively new portal that we launched. called our interchain token service. And so what the interchain token service does is it tries to take existing tokens, or if you want to build a new token, you can do that as well, and turn it into an interchain token. So let's imagine you had the APAC DAO coin on BNB chain. I don't know what chain your guys are actually on, but you could basically take that token interchain and make it available on all the other blockchains and have the built-in bridging capabilities. And so to me, the best way to do this is actually to get a little bit raw here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up our docs, and I'm going to say I want to upgrade an existing token. And so I'm going to here, kind of live here with everyone, make a brand new token. So that was still loading. I clicked a little bit too fast, sorry. All right, this is not working. One sec. Let me just get the URL real quick. Interesting. My apologies. You know what? We'll go the other path. We'll actually just use the interface entirely. So if you wanted to just deploy a new interchain token, you just give it a name. So we'll just call it APAC DAO, maybe AD. 18, and I'll give it myself 1,000 just to get started. Let's go ahead and register this token. So we get to decide what chains we want it to be on. So let's just choose a whole bunch. And what happens is you are going to end up paying the gas for the messages. So there's going to be messages from the Avalanche chain out to all of these blockchains. So it's going to take about 1 AVAX in fees. And now we can just hit deploy and register. And so what this will do is this will pop up MetaMask a couple times, and then it will create that token on all of these different blockchains, and then give us the built-in methods to bridge that token back and forth. And so this is going to take a little bit because, again, what's happening is this token is now being created on the Avalanche chain, and then a message is being sent to all those other blockchains I picked. And then on every blockchain that I picked, that token will then show up as an ERC20 with the methods that we need. So you can actually go ahead and see the transactions on Axelar Scan. And one even cooler thing is you can actually follow along with this whole path. So if I just search for my wallet address, we're going to see I've sent a message from Avalanche to Arbitrum, Avalanche to Base, Avalanche to Phantom, Avalanche to BNB Chain, and so on. And then based on their definition of finality, those messages are going to get confirmed by the network, approved, and then executed. And then we will have a token that exists on all of those different blockchains. And so I'm going to come back to that part of the demo in just a little bit.
Wow.
So this is an example of where we're sending tokens, but we're using the message passing underneath the hood, right? Like we're not actually using native bridging of Axelar. We're just building our own bridges on top of Axelar. So you can think of Axelar less as a bridge and more as a platform for interchain, or a platform for even building your own bridges. And so when we start thinking about this idea of message passing, you can think of it, instead of moving assets to the DEX where you want it or where the compute function is, you're actually moving that compute to wherever your assets are. And this opens up a ton of different possibilities. And so I actually find the easiest way, so we have a chart here that I can walk through, but I find the easiest way to understand the flow is really just to go to one of these transactions and follow it along. So what happened was on a source chain, so in this case, Avalanche, I emitted an event, right? That event was, hey, create this. In this case, it was actually sending this token. So I wrote a smart contract. I called an event, and then I paid gas. And we'll come back to gas in a second. Then all of those independent validators that were staking on the Axelar network, they voted and they say, did this happen? And then that vote was again delivered to the destination chain. And then because it was all signed, you could go and execute my smart contract code. And so you've got this end-to-end connectivity that then gives users this one-click experience for doing things across multiple blockchains. The method APIs are really straightforward, and they should match what we just talked about. So on the source chain, you just have a destination chain for your message, the destination address for your message, and then what is the message? And you'll notice that it's bytes here, so you can send anything you want. You can send strings, you can send structs, you can send addresses. One of the code examples we have is being able to send over a bunch of tokens and then distribute those tokens across a bunch of different addresses. So you send 1,000 tokens, you want to send that to 100 different addresses. You can do all of that just by baking that into the payload. And then on the destination chain, you're actually given the source chain, the source address, and then that message. And the reason you get the source chain and the source address is so that if you want to do authorization, you can do that. So the Axelar network actually handles authentication, right? You have all those independent validators signing and saying, did this happen? Did this come from the source address based on their own copies of those blockchains? And then you can decide if you want to authorize that user or do any sort of limits there. And I mentioned I'd come back to gas a couple of times. Cross-chain gas is actually really complicated because you actually have 3 different blockchains being involved. You have a source blockchain where you've got gas paid. You've got the Axelar network where you have this interoperability layer where you're paying for that consensus of all those validators. And then you have whatever code you've written on the destination chain that you need to go and execute that costs gas in that native chain. And so what Axelar has done is we built a gas service that basically, again, this is permissionless. Anyone could build this, but we just tried to make it easy where you basically give us the details so we can recognize the transaction, and then you can pay in the native currency of the source chain. So if you're sending a message from Avalanche, you could send us send the gas service AVAX, and then it will handle the paying for the Axelar network, and it'll handle the paying on the destination chain there as well. So what have we learned so far? Because I want to get into the AMA. We've seen how we can send just bare tokens, like so. AUSDC is a version of USDC that exists on all the Cosmos chains, those sorts of things. So we can move all those tokens around really easily. We've got deposit addresses to make it simple. If you have an existing token or you want a brand new token and you want that token to be everywhere, we've got this new interchain token service. And then the bigger kind of more open-ended thing is of any dApp is just the ability to connect these different blockchains and really elevate what you're building into an interchain application rather than just an application that is bound to a single blockchain. If you're interested in any of this and getting started, we have this Axelar examples repo, which is really great. It has a whole bunch of built-in examples that basically can just get you started with a bunch of use cases from like taking an NFT across chain all the way to like building a little NFT auction house that does cross chain, all those sorts of things. We also have just video tutorials. So if you go on our YouTube, you'll see a bunch of tutorials where we'll actually go ahead and live build some of these things so you can follow along. And then I did want to give a sneak peek. I'm seeing questions in the chat around the Axelar virtual machine. And so the Axelar virtual machine at its most basic is the ability to run smart contracts on the Axelar network. So we're a Cosmos chain, so we have a node software that is run by all those independent validators. And what the Axelar virtual machine will allow us to do is basically run arbitrary code on those that's run on those executed by those validators. So we can build new applications at the application layer instead of at the consensus layer. So we don't have to like update the network to change and build new applications. And the magic there comes with the interchain amplifier where effectively what we're building is a more open router. So if you want to go and connect Solana, you want to go and connect Say, you want to go and build any new blockchain into the Axelar network, you can do it, right? You deploy your gateways, you figure out what you're going to do about relaying using some of our relaying code if you want. And then you basically just register at the application layer your new connection. And then that connection can get access to the rest of the Axelar network, all those other blockchains. And so basically it's a self-serve way of teams coming in and connecting themselves into the Axelar network so that you get kind of synchronous, or not synchronous, bidirectional communication with all these different networks. The question is around status of this. So if you check out, we actually have a DevNet version of the Axelar network that has these primitives, that has this smart contract language. So we are working on graduating from DevNet over to testnet now. I don't want to give any sort of timelines, but I'll say soon to medium term is when people should be seeing that on testnets. The other question is around Interchain Maestro. So this was a product that we announced a while ago that we started seeing some of the first features kind of rolling out, which is the ability to orchestrate across multiple blockchains smart contract management. Some people have called it kind of the Kubernetes of Web3. And so, for example, we being connected to so many different blockchains, we maintain a gateway across a huge number of different blockchains. And so for us, managing that used to be a nightmare, right? Like going and managing smart contracts on a whole bunch of different blockchains. And so the purpose of Maestro is to allow you to basically send one message to the Axelar network saying, hey, update my contracts. And then that message gets to all of the different blockchains you want, updating contracts, executing governance, whatever you want to do. And so you can think of that interchain token service as one of the first pieces of Maestro, where you can now create a token that exists simultaneously across multiple blockchains. So like not having to have a home base, it can just kind of be everywhere, and you can orchestrate an entire network. And so that's actually a perfect segue back. We should actually now see that our token has executed everywhere. And so now we can see we've got on Avalanche. So if anyone wanted to, you could just go and add it, deploy it to all the others. I'm just saving gas for now, testnet gas. And now you can see I've got 1K on Avalanche where I created it. And now I can just choose where do I want to send it on any of my chains. And then I can just choose an amount to send. And so if you look at this address across any of these blockchains at the Explorers, you're going to just see an ERC20. It just looks like a normal ERC20. It can work with any dApp, any system.
So actually, we just pay the gas fee in the original blockchain, and it will like automatically pay in other chains as well, right?
Yep, exactly. So going back to that example we were looking at earlier. So this was a message from Avalanche to BNB chain. You can so you can see that I put in where is it? 0.2 AVAX, and then it used 0.006 AVAX for the confirmation on Axelar. It used 0.02 AVAX for the approval, and then 0.014 AVAX for the execution on BNB chain. So you can see here's the native prices and then the converted prices. So basically what we're doing is we're just doing the conversion for you. And then what we'll do is if there's any funds left over, you'll see a refund effectively, which so like you can always overpay transactions. Like there's no risk to it because we just refund whatever's left over. So you can see here, token deployment initialization, whatever was left just got refunded back to my wallet.
Interesting. But like for maybe for also for the token transfer and the like messaging between smart contract, there's some case that like the transaction is failed in the destination chain, right? So
why would it trend like so if you wrote a smart contract where you like an invalid smart contract, let's say I wrote a destination smart contract that reverted, yes, it would revert, but usually like that's not something we see. I mean, if you just look across all the transactions going across the network, that's not usually how people or transactions fail. Just because like if you're building a valid smart contract on both sides and like you don't have edge cases that you haven't handled, the transactions will just kind of go through. Like that's not a failure we see. So I'm curious, like you'll note that all of these are just executed.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let me just finish up the presentation. I think I only have like 1 or 2 more slides, which is that we can't wait to see what you build. And then happy to dive into the AMA. But if you have any feedback about the session today, we are all ears. We always want to do everything we can to make these sorts of presentations, demos, etc. better. So feedback is always welcome. But I will turn over to the AMA, and we got lots of good questions in the chat, and I know you had some questions as well.
All right. Yeah. I have a lot of questions myself as well, and also I see a lot of like questions coming up in the chat and also in Discord. So yeah, thanks again for the sharing. It's very informative sharing from Stephen. Yeah, I think right now a lot of like layer 1 and layer 2 is coming up. I think maybe 100 or even 1,000 of new blockchains coming up, and one of the biggest problem is the segmentation of like TVL in different blockchain. And of course, there are like some existing solution already, but I think like none of them can solve all the problem, not just token bridging, but also like calling smart contract function like Axelar what offers. And also like before when we like make a new project and start to have the first question is, where should I deploy the smart contract? And where should I create the token? Which blockchain should I use? But I think Axelar opened a very new like perspective for how we are going to build. Like the other question is where our user is, where our user are. So yeah, thanks again. Maybe I will just go straight to the AMA session with some of the questions from the Google chat first. So the first one from Tao is, given the rapid growth of layer 1 and layer 2 data availability and other Web 3 layers, how can we simplify the development of new connection to the Axelar network and streamline interchain dApp deployments?
Sure. Yeah, it's a fantastic question just because this is a very complex, hard topic, right? Like at its most basic layer, you need someone to, the hardest parts are you need an independent, decentralized set of folks to validate the transaction. And then you need what we call relayers, or someone to like notice that a transaction happened on one chain and trigger a transaction on another one. So we're really trying to simplify this process with the Axelar VM, right? Like we have all of the primitives necessary that if you were to bring your own validator, set your own relayers, this would be a trivial problem. But we effectively want to get to a place where we're minimizing the amount of work you have to do. You're able to take advantage of the existing network that we have, and you're able to take advantage of either our relayers directly or all of the code for our relayers and the services that those relayers are offering, in order for you to like have a very minimal implementation necessary to do this. Like I will say I'm very excited, for example, the day the AVM goes on testnet to start bringing in like fake blockchains, like define my own definition of consensus to be my Twilio endpoint, and then enable like Twilio messaging directly from Axelar network. Like those sorts of like Web 2 to Web 3 connections, I'm personally very excited about, because now imagine being able to send an SMS from any blockchain just via Axelar network. I think those sorts of things are very, very cool. And the Axelar VM should help a huge amount with that.
I see. Yeah, thank you. So I think that question is about like, because right now you're supporting around 47 blockchain, right? So it should be a very good way to integrate with new blockchain at the like very easy way in the future. So I think what you share about the virtual machine might be a good way for that. All right. And also, this question is already about virtual machine and the interchain amplifier. I think
I think I talked about that one already.
Right? Yeah. Okay. What is Alexar's approach to crossing interoperability?
Sure. So I'll talk about that from two perspectives. So in the most simple perspective, you end up having EVM to EVM. So this is probably the majority of transactions that people want to do today, where all of the APIs are the same. You've got like a bytes on one end, and then you end up getting a bytes on the other end. And so what we do is instead of like, if you look at a lot of the EVM interoperability solutions out there, like Polkadot, what Polkadot was trying to do, for example, it was pairwise. And so like every chain had to establish a connection and a way of verifying messages from another chain. What we've done is we're building on top of these pairwise connections to build this kind of network. Right? Yeah, but like where Axelar ends up being a hub for all of those, so that any chain can send to another chain. This still ends up being very easy in the EVM to EVM world, but we also support crossing chain tech stacks, right? We are agnostic to what tech stack that someone's actually integrating with. So, for example, a lot of the blockchains that we're integrated with today are integrated via IBC, whether they're Cosmos chains or like Evmos, for example. And so we have IBC connections to a bunch of different blockchains where we can now deliver a message from Ethereum to Osmosis, for example. And so that's super powerful. Basically, the complexity there is that you just have to make sure that the bytes that you're encoding are formatted in a way that we can then decode within a COSM-WASM type ecosystem. So that's, for example, like writing it as JSON, like instead of like the native EVM constructs.
I see. So actually, you are like taking a different approach rather than pairing between EVM and EVM. So if we're going to do that way, there will be a lot of connection between different chains, right? But if we just a hub, the number of connection will be reduced. And also, you guys are using Cosmos, so you can like reuse what the infrastructure that Cosmos already built. for the question.
Exactly. We were trying to take advantage and build on top of IBC because IBC is pretty good overall.
Yeah, that's right. All right. For the next question from Victor, for interchain security, especially with bridges, is always a big issue. Yeah, we all know that. How you guys solve it, and what technology makes you guys outstanding if comparing to other competitors?
Sure. I will say the number one thing that we do is decentralization. Whereas, like, we are not a. It would be trivial to build a Lambda function that watches blockchain A and delivers messages to blockchain B, right? But that wouldn't be secure. It wouldn't be decentralized, right? Because everyone now that uses your app has to trust that you're going to do the right thing, that Lambda is trustworthy, all these sorts of things. So by being decentralized, that is our primary path to security, in addition to audits and all the other kind of Web3 security best practices. And so the fact, for example, that we have on-chain methods that are verifying the validator signatures before doing anything makes us secure, right? Like you cannot just send a message to someone's smart contract and then expect it to execute, right? You have to actually have sent that approval first with all the signatures that were verified by a elliptic curve threshold, and then from there, then you can actually execute. And so that decentralization, and like you have to compromise a huge number of validators with a lot of incentives not to defect via their proof of stake in order to kind of manipulate truth of the network.
I see. Yeah, so I think most of the hacks around bridges is how they manage the multi-sig key, right? So in your network, is stored in the validator, or like how you guys manage it in the decentralized way?
Yeah. So it's threshold signatures. So it's quadratic voting, and so like every network knows all the validators' public keys, and every network knows the voting stake of those validators, and then we verify that in order to execute a message. So it's a little bit like a multi-sig, but it's a multi-sig with a huge number of validators and proof of stake. Like they are staking to ensure the security of the network. Okay,
got it. So as number of the validators is growing, I think Axelar is more secure in the future than even now.
Yeah, and I mean, and like we've thought a lot about even how does this scale. So for example, if you look at the architecture where we separate the approval from the execution, we can send one approval basically per block. And so you could have validators vote on 100 transactions, 1,000 transactions, and all of those approvals to like BNB chain, for example, could be delivered in a single message and saying, here's all the transactions, here's all the validator signatures. And then that one message approves all 1,000 of those transactions without having to send the signatures over and over and over. And so that helps us scale as well.
I see. Yeah, that's a very good approach. All right. Let me ask the next question. What's the main difference between you and your competitors right now? Do you consider any one as a competitor? Yeah,
I mean, there's a few different teams working in the interoperability space. But what I'll say is we really focus on the three things I kind of started with, which is security and decentralization first, huge amount of connected chains. So like we try and be in every chain that developers care about and ask for, and we're trying to make it so that anyone can plug in chains. Like we want to live in a world where we have Solana and Aptos and Sui and like not just EVM chains, like really connect all of blockchain. And so I think we're doing very well there, and I'm not aware of anyone that has more connections than we do. And then the last piece is just this really good developer experience. So like having Axelar Scan, giving you that single view of like all the different stages a transaction goes through, being able to see that, I think it makes it very easy and fun to develop on Axelar.
Yeah, exactly. I think having the Axelar Scan, making it have a very good UI in the web is a good advantage compared to other competitors. And I think the general message passing is one of the very unique selling point that you guys have over the other competitors. All right, this is a question from an audience. I think probably they're asking about audit when they try to build app that can connect to different blockchains. So if they integrate with Axelar, is there any difference between the auditing step of dApp that integrate with like Axelar normal like normal way?
Yeah, I mean, auditing is obviously critical. The way that I tend to think about it is I tend to believe that Axelar is trustless and decentralized, and like you can look at the number of audits that have been done. You can look again at the Uniswap approval, like where you have people digging in very deep to ensure that Axelar is secure, and then kind of marking that, noting that, and then going on to just do a normal audit of your application. I mean, the challenges that we see are some auditors aren't used to thinking that way. And so you have to think about like what happens if a message comes in from a different address, right? Like that we didn't create. Like how do I maintain the access control, the authorization lists within my application so that we don't end up seeing like interchain messages that like you don't actually want or intend, right? Because like Axelar, again, it's the difference between authentication and authorization. Axelar will authenticate, make sure that this is true. This message came from this address on blockchain, but if you're not checking that address, and then anyone can send you a message and maybe mint your tokens and things like that. And so just making sure that you're thinking through a couple of those implications, and then a normal audit, it will be fantastic.
I see. Wow. So given the links you sent us, there are a lot of auditing has been done in the past. A lot.
And we never stop. we are constantly doing more and more.
Yeah, I feel more confident now. All right. So probably I will ask a couple of questions from myself. So what is the maximum TPS that Axelar can handle? Is there any like limitation on the number of chains that can be connected in to Axelar in the future?
Sure. So when it comes to TPS, one of the things to know about the Axelar network that's part of the design is that we are not actually including either the payloads or the transactions from the other chains on our network at all. So like if you look at the vote that is on chain, all we need is like the hash of the transaction and then the validator votes. And that is enough to ensure security across different blockchains. And so you could send lots and lots of giant messages and like the size of the message doesn't really matter to us. So like we're nowhere near hitting any sort of TPS limit. And then like even if we started to, I don't know, theoretically, if we million-x'd and we started to run into scaling problems, there are ways of sharding the Axelar network that don't affect developer experience at all, such as like having validators focused on subsets of the connected chains and things like that. And then to the second point is there a limit on the number of chains that can be connected to Axelar? Not practically. I mean, I think the bigger challenges are making sure that the stake that the validators are putting up that are voting on those transactions for those chains are meaningful, such that like those messages are secure. And then beyond that, it's really about with the AVM making that possible. And so like there was a question connected to that about status of interchain amplifier. Basically, it's in DevNet right now. And so if you want access to our DevNet to get a very early preview that's like not finished APIs, not finalized, no documentation, etc., happy to share that information.
So because there's no limitation for the number of blockchain in the future, so for the validator, does they have to run the node from different blockchains in a single like validator?
Sure. So that's one of the pieces that we are trying to figure out. So right now with the AVM, you basically you bring your own validator network, and so the idea is that like you could go and ask all the existing validators on the Axelar network saying, hey, can you validate for my chain as well? But we're trying to find either automated or kind of other more scalable solutions for that, so that you don't have everyone going out and getting their own set of validators and relayers, which we want everyone to have the ease of connecting to the network.
Yeah, I think that's very that's a good problem to have, that you guys have to solve to scale the decentralized network of validator in the future.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So another question from the audience: do you think which one we should follow? Like focus on developing interchain between few big blockchains, or expanding to as much chains as we can, since I see liquidity now focus on few chains?
Yeah, I would say I hate this answer, but it depends. We look at the existing applications across the network. So you will see teams like Squid. So they've built cross-chain swaps. So from any token on any chain to any token on any chain via intelligent DEX routing. So they'll DEX on chain A, then bridge the assets over, and then DEX on chain B to get you from whatever asset to whatever asset you want in the most efficient way possible. They, for example, they have like all of their blockchains are equal. They have no home chain. If you contrast that with like Junkyard that uses Axelar, or Prime. So what they do is they have more of a main chain and then like a hub and spoke model where they have a main chain where like their smart contracts, their source of truth is, and then they have the ability to interact from other blockchains. So for example, Junkyard, they have the ability to, I think they use, for example, Chainlink on Polygon for randomness, but then they're doing most of the actual computation or the actual execution on Ethereum for moving around NFTs, et cetera. Another example that uses Axelar is Prime Protocol, where their source of truth, I think, is Moonbeam, but then they allow users to interact and send assets from any other chain.
Cool. So I know that the virtual machine is still under development, but can you tell me, like, is there any new programming language that we need to learn for the virtual machine?
Sure. So again, we don't expect most developers to have to interact with the AVM. Most developers are going to be building at the application layer on top of this chain connectivity. But if you are like an integrator, you are working with a blockchain, or you want to connect one of the blockchains, there's a few different pieces of tech stack. So obviously there's a gateway that needs to exist on the blockchain you're integrating. So that's in whatever blockchain you want. So like Solana, that's Rust, et cetera. The actual part on the Axelar side of things is 𝐬𝐳𝐬𝐬. So as a Cosmos chain, the smart contract language that we're shipping with is 𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬.
I see. Yeah. So like it's not totally new.
No. We've not come up with our own language.
Yeah.
I really like teams that use existing languages and existing tech and then make them go further. For example, I don't know if anyone's heard of there's a chain that I'm forgetting the name of right now, but it's an EVM chain that uses JavaScript for smart contracts. I love those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm not sure too, but I think there are other blockchain like Mina protocol where the user can write their application, their dApps in smart contract in JavaScript, but it's not actually smart contract. It's like off chain.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Let me see. So could you share more about like other tools that you guys developed for Axelar?
Sure. So we have a whole bunch of tools. So like we are building this. The main focus that we do is building this platform and those primitives that allow you to build interchain applications. But we do have a bunch of examples where we're trying to make it easy to solve certain problems across the ecosystem. And so one of those is not actually from us, but it's from a team that we've helped a little bit, or we're involved in a little bit, which is Squid. And so I mentioned this idea of cross-chain swaps. Basically, they have an SDK that if you can just plug in and then accept payments from any chain in any token. So not actually even have to do the interchain development yourself. You can just plug into their SDK. And so then let's say you just want to build a Moonbeam application and take payments in any token, right? And then they'll get delivered to you in whatever format you want. So that's an example. I've shown off the Axelar examples, or I talked a little bit about the Axelar examples repo. Definitely check out the Axelar examples repo. It builds in this tool called Axelar Local Dev, where we spin up 5 local blockchains on your machine and then deploy all the gateways to them, deploy all the services to them, and then emulate the Axelar network basically instantly. So you don't have to, like, while you're doing development, while you're doing testing, you don't have to wait for any real transactions across multiple blockchains, but you still get this very nice interchain development experience.
Okay. So with the vision of the project, so how far have we come now? And can you tell me like what's the next big thing for Axelar?
I mean, I think everyone's excited about the Axelar VM. That's going to be one of the next big things that folks are going to see from us. Just in addition to the kind of relentless rollout of improvements, new blockchains, all those sorts of things.
All right. And Victor had another question. I hear you guys point out an important decentralized with over like 75 nodes. I think it's better than a lot of chains, but not a huge number. How do you guys maintain decentralization at the highest level?
Yeah, so effectively, we keep increasing the number. So we keep allowing new validators to be part of the validator set. And so like being a validator is permissionless. So like anyone can do it. You just have to put up the stake, like more stake than the other whatever validators are out there. But we keep increasing that so that the kind of threshold keeps getting lower and lower. Yeah, so it all comes down to just like making sure that there are validators with meaningful stake that are part of the set and adding value to the results. So that continues to increase. And then I think we'll also see some interesting solutions around scalability around validators with the AVM and with this interchain amplifier that is connecting a bunch of new blockchains that all need their own decentralized consensus.
So what's the current like criteria for becoming a validator in Axelar?
I mean, it's stake, right? Like we don't necessarily choose the validators. We just set the number, and then the people with the most stake are become those validators.
I see. So there's no minimum for the staking?
I mean, whatever the lowest staker is on Axelar Scan, I think.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I think it's almost an hour. I think we'll just have like a few more questions, and then we can like close the session now. So one other thing is why does Axelar use a delegated proof of stake model with Cosmos? Why didn't you choose any other solution?
We really like proof of stake because then the validators have something to lose. It's easy to scale the network without having to like proof of work, just the amount of compute and electricity that's required and things like that. And then the idea of it being delegated proof of stake just allows anyone to participate in that that consensus and be able to vote on proposals and things like that without having to run your own validator node. So the idea is everyone should get the benefits of a proof of stake model without having to like run a validator.
Okay. And what are the possibilities that I can explore when participating in Axelar, even beyond being a builder? What other roles can I play?
Sure. Obviously, every token holder adds to the security of the network. So holding tokens helps. There's I think intentional light inflation on the network, so that you get more tokens based on staking and things like that. You can be an integrator, so you can like come and work with us, work with the AVM, and connect your own chain, and then just builds cool interchain dApps.
I see. And also like this one, I have a question. Like for now, quantum computing might seem a bit like far in the future, but with current news, it will probably come faster than prediction. So is there any like problem, or how does that affect Axelar in the future?
I mean, we are subject to disruption by quantum computing in the same way that every blockchain is. So if someone comes up with a quantum algorithm to solve private keys from public keys, I think we're all in trouble. But I think at the same time, we're also like I saw recently an article about quantum cryptography proof hashing algorithms and things like that. And so or public-private key encryption. So if we're able to come up with those and migrate to them fast enough, then I think we're all going to be okay.
Yeah, I hope so. So like recently, I read a lot about like account abstraction in Ethereum. So I think they're trying to solve this quantum computing problem with introducing smart contract wallet. So in that smart contract wallet, they can allow like quantum computing hats that you mentioned. So it will can go against that. But I think it's still fine in the future. Right now, we all need to to have an external own account for the APAC abstraction. I think that's a question that I have. So if you guys don't have any question, I think we can close the session now because it's already more than 1 hour. So thanks, Stephen, a lot for sharing a lot about Axelar and what you guys are doing. Maybe head back to Nicole.
Thanks, everybody. I got to drop off too. It was really great. Thank you for sticking out. And if you want to learn more, definitely feel free to send me a message or on Telegram or on Discord. I'm Stephen Fluin everywhere. So thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
So for those who are joining us today, please make sure that you are tuning in our Discord channel. We're going to have more sessions to come. And next week, we're going to have the office hours with base team. And this time, the format's going to be a bit different. So we're not just going to have the updates from the team themselves, but then we're going to have we're going to give you like the chance to shine the stage as well, where we would invite like 5 to 7 teams to present the showcases on base. And pretty much we're going to be doing this with a lot of the other trend, I think prominent chains as well, like Mental Network and Say Network coming up in September. So please do stay tuned. Please join our Discord channel, follow our social media, and we hope to see you in the next AMAs. So thanks, everyone, and have a great night. And we'll see you in the next sessions to come. Okay, thanks, Anh Phuc, and everyone.